Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com. Hi, it's Jocelyn Hardrick. Welcome back to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Today, we are passing the mic to Christina Potter Bayern. Christina is a bilingual attorney and founder of Potter Bayern Law, PLLC, a personal injury and business litigation firm that combines the attributes of compassion and tenacity, as she offers approachable and personalized legal representation for businesses and individuals. Christina graduated with her JD from the American University Washington College of Law, and during law school, she took part in the Civil Advocacy Clinic and interned at the Maryland Court of Appeals, the highest appellate court in Maryland. She also served as president of the Latin Law Students Association and became co-editor-in-chief for one of the law school's legal publications. She's admitted to practice in all the jurisdictions here in Florida, state of Florida, Middle District, Northern District, and Southern District. And aside from her legal work, she enjoys engaging in the community and spending time with her family. She is the president-elect of the Tampa Hispanic Bar Association, serves as chair of the Tampa Hispanic Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division, and serves as a member of the Florida Bar's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I have been following Journey to Esquire for a little bit since I moved to Tampa, and I am so happy to see how far this program has gotten in just a few years.
Yeah, and we're so happy that you joined us. Christina was one of our sponsors at our 5th anniversary celebration, made a generous contribution to allow that event to happen. We're now in our 6th year, and I want to thank you so much because we go to big law firms all the time and all kinds of people, and you have a smaller law firm and you gave a significant contribution. And that is really what it's about when it comes to doing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're going to talk about that committee you're on, and we're going to talk about some things happening right now. And I'm Tampa Hispanic Bar Association, wonderful organization that I've been enjoying their events for years. But before we get to all the great stuff you're doing now, let's go back and find out, why did you want to be a lawyer in the first place?
My journey to kind of wanting to be a lawyer was I guess it started in probably 11th grade. That was a decent student, but I wasn't definitely on the trajectory to be a lawyer at such a young age. But around 11th grade, I kind of had a come to Jesus moment because I had a high school counselor tell me, I had, potential or whatever to do a bunch of things, but I just wasn't performing. I wasn't honestly, I was trying, but not trying my hardest. So I appreciate this counselor sitting me down and saying, in the trajectory you're on, you might not even get into college, like in the way. And I know you have a lot of potential or whatever, and I know you can do it. And truthfully, I was new, but I always felt I was the kind of person that's like, well, I don't want to have to prove myself. Like, I know who I am and everything. But one thing I learned in that time was you might know who you are, but not everyone else knows who you are. So there are certain metrics you have to meet, right? And so it was not a very maybe insightful moment for other people, but for me it was. And so I used that advice, and instead of taking it offensively, I used it and I said, no, this is constructive feedback, and this is something I need to apply and listen to. Well, that was a catalyst for me because that moment on, I was full in. I was like, I am going to college. I am doing this. And if anyone's familiar with the college or remembers the college application process, by the time you're in 11th grade, I mean, your GPA, it's set, like it's pretty set. But I did not let that deter me. I said, even if it's close to being set, I'm going to do whatever I can to get to the next step. And I did. And I changed my study habits very quickly. And I knew I wasn't doing it just to get my GPA up for others, but basically proving to myself that I could do it. So long story short, I started looking at what are my talents, what are the things I like to do. And I always did have more of a facility for reading and writing. And my personality also was very about advocating. I always stood up for like the person in class that was being made fun of. I always had a kind of that inclination. And then that's it. I was just looking for different like jobs that kind of reflected that. And my uncle was applying to law school and I was asking him about it. And I asked him, hey, like what does it look like? What do you do? And I was like, you know what, this might be a good route for me. So, and that's kind of what started the process.
Well, that's awesome. So you actually was watching someone go through the process at the same time. So what happened with your uncle? Did he end up going to law school and becoming a lawyer?
He did. He ended up going to UF and he was the first in his family because my aunt married him and he was the first in his family to go. And he was a police officer before. And I really was inspired by the fact that he was able to change careers at an older age. He wasn't very old, but at an older age, maybe than the average, age of going to law school. So I was very inspired by that. And seeing someone tell me about it was definitely helpful in having some guidance as to what I would need. I still, had to study on my own and everything, but I had a resource and I had someone to ask. And that's always, I think really important when you're starting a career.
Oh, absolutely. That's why Journey to Esquire exists, right? Because I didn't have resources. I didn't have anyone in my family here in the US who had done it. And so we're just kind of building the plane while we're flying it, so to speak. And so great. So you're 11th grade. You have one more year to kind of get it together in order to get to college, because you got to go to college in order to go to law school. And well, you're successful now, so you got it together. So let's talk about, so you go to college and then now you're looking at, okay, how do I get into this law school application? What was that process like for you?
So in college, thankfully, I already had kind of the kick in the rear and I knew that whatever I was doing wasn't working. So I was like, whatever I was doing isn't working. So whatever I have to do is the opposite what I need to do. I luckily would say that because, and I honestly say if I wasn't, for me, it helped me that high school, maybe I had a little bit of, a couple challenges because in college, I was full throttle. I was like, all right, I have to make up for this. So right from the get go in college, I would say that because of what I was, having to compensate for in high school, I started getting involved in what I could, learning, asking questions, going to organizations like, Phi Alpha Delta, talking to lawyers and everything like that. How do I apply for law school? And I was very open to listening and everything because I knew that what was doing wasn't working. And so that's what I did. In college, I would try and reach out to different lawyers. I would invite them to events at the college, and then I would kind of learn how to apply. So that kind of geared me to apply to law school. And I did take the LSAT a few times. Not that I didn't do super well. It was okay. I wasn't a great test taker, but enough. But I did it because I didn't always have the financial means to get to law school and pay. And so I took the LSAT a few times to see if I could kind of lift up my scores and everything. So my application process it was a waiting period. I applied to law school a few times actually. So I applied twice and I did it for financial reasons. And I would say that my journey, if I could, and we'll get much more into detail of it, I'm sure, but I would say if I could describe my journey in a sentence is that my journey was marked with a lot of waiting.
Yes, there is growth in the waiting. There's a lot of opportunity in waiting. It requires patience, which is waiting with a good attitude. So a lot of, I teach at a school that's an access school. So we do have a lot of students who are like you, right? They had to take the LSAT a few times. They're trying to get, scholarships. They're trying to leverage as much resources as possible. And so although this is a long journey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so sometimes waiting is going to be part of your best strategy. So now you're finally getting to the point where you have the score, you're applying and getting acceptances. How do you decide where you actually go to school? Because you're a Florida girl and you end up in, Washington, D.C.
Yes. I kind of spread my net wide. So I was definitely gravitating towards state school for financial reasons, but my undergraduate degree was in international studies and economics. So I always had I really liked international kind of law, not law, I should say, but international topics and things. And so I was like, okay, I like this topic and I studied it in college, like what schools or whatever, what schools may offer programs. And so that kind of made me cast my net wide. And so I chose a school in DC that had a program for that. But I was looking, I considered different things. I considered financial, my financial ability to pay. I considered my interest. And I considered, the school and the education and what that school could offer me specific. So I did cast my net wide, and I did get like the first time around, I did get some acceptances, but they weren't a lot of scholarships the first time around. I think I applied a little bit later in the process. So the next time around, I applied even earlier to make sure I had a seat in earlier. And that kind of opened up more opportunities because at that point, there's more financial ability. They haven't given all the financial aid and scholarships out. And so that actually, from the school I went to, I was initially accepted part-time. And then the following year, I was accepted full-time with a scholarship. So that made a big difference in 1 year.
Yeah, and that's a great lesson for our listeners. First, if you're able to apply early, because the admissions people are trying to snatch up the great students. And so they tend to give out scholarships early, and they have a limited amount of funds every year. Second, if you don't like the offers you got the first time, try again, because you're now competing with a different pool of people. Sometimes they have a great pool and everyone has the top GPAs. And so the average LSAT score and GPA for that class is very high. But the next year, all kinds of things could happen. It could be a recession. There could be maybe lots of jobs flowing. Maybe the economy is really good and people aren't trying to go to school. So then you have a lower GPA and lower LSAT score, which makes you more competitive in comparison. And again, more likely to get scholarships. So there is a lot of strategy when it comes to applying to law school. Some people are just holding on by the, seat of their pants. But if you are able to financially, time wise, right? Because everyone's coming from different backgrounds. You might have a job, you might be living with, in one place and have to move. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but there is strategy as well. So you talked about financial reasons they gave you a scholarship, but you're moving from Florida to DC. DC is a big city. What part of Florida were you living in?
I was in Miami. I was in Miami.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm from New York. And I moved to Tallahassee, big culture shock. So what was it like going from Miami to DC for you?
Yes, and great point on the financial thing. It was actually more expensive, ironically, to move into DC. So I will get into that a little bit later about finances, but it was a big change. I did enjoy DC. I did like the walkability, which is similar to New York. I love the walkability of DC. For me, law school was a growing experience, not just obviously scholastically, but going to a completely different culture. Even if it's in the United States, it's still a different culture, right? Because, here it's not as it's just different. And so it was a big culture shock. It was hard for me. It was a challenge. My first semester was definitely a challenge for me, but I think it did make me better. Like, I do think that I felt like I was in boot camp, in a psychological boot camp, because you're dealing with having to study and learn a whole new set of study habits, because you're reading a lot more I personally read much more in law school than I did in college. And on top of that, new type of testing, right? And then on top of that, I'm in a new environment looking around and going, I also have to familiarize myself with where's the closest coffee shop? Where would I get where would I get this? Where would I get my groceries? And all of that is definitely a big learning process.
Yeah, and you didn't mention all the snow. You're from Miami, girl. I know that cold weather hit you that first winter. You were like, whoa, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. Cold weather hit me. And in Miami, I had my family all around me. So that was a huge challenge for me. So I'm very family oriented. I always had a good support system in Miami. And this was my first time, even though I did go to University of South Florida in Tampa, it was still a 4-hour drive. If I had a lonely moment, it was tough, but I would have like once a month drive home, and it was a 4-hour, it was a 4-hour drive and I could do it. But this time I was like, I'm staying. Like, there's no, flights are cheap, and I'll probably get there once every 6 months for the holidays. So that was also a big culture shock for me, leaving family. That was a lot of pressure for the first semester.
Yeah, so it sounds like, you enjoyed law school based on your bio because you joined all these organizations. What was your experience like while you were in law?
My experience in law school was very challenging. The first semester was the most challenging for me. And I actually went in a special program in the summer for, I think it was generation students. I believe it was first generation students or some sort of metrics. I forgot how you had to meet them, but it was really nice because it kind of did like an intro to law school for a week, which I thought was helpful. Unfortunately, though, I had some medical conditions. I do personal injury, but I personally have my own personal injury, back issues, and also some other health issues that had me going my first semester, basically going to physical therapy a few times a week, getting evaluated by doctors. So My first semester was very challenging with health, and I didn't perform as well as I wanted because I was not as focused with my health. I was in pain a lot. I was in and out of doctors. Like after school, I would run to get a train, go to a doctor. I mean, those are like, while I'm not studying, those 2 hours, that's 2 hours out of my night. And if anyone's in their first semester of law school, you know that after school, you're exhausted and you still have to study. So you add another element to that. That was definitely hard. And my first semester, I did not do as well as I wanted. I definitely was not in the rankings as I wanted to be, or not even, I don't know if I was ranking to be honest. But again, I was confronted with the situation, a similar situation, as high school, where I'm like bottom of the barrel in the sense of I need to make up for my grades or I'm going to have an issue. So again, I felt like I'm reliving something. And now my whole trajectory after the first semester is making up for that first semester, saying, okay, if I want to work in X place, it's time to kind of deal with what I have and figure it out. So it was challenging, but I would say that yes, with the community involvement, what I started doing was second semester, getting involved, meeting people and networking. And I was involved in Law Students Association. I was involved in different organizations, and it was great because they were so kind and generous with their time and mentored me. And that was huge. And I'm happy to say that I was able to turn get my grades a lot higher and better, but it was not, it wasn't always an easy experience, I would say.
Yeah, and that's a trend I notice a lot with students because I always tell students your first term, oh, just focus. You can't do anything else because you have to figure this thing out. And there's a lot of students like you who are struggling with chronic pain and conditions. And so I've talked to a lot of people. We have to give ourselves a lot of grace, right? And to say, there are people who they don't have nothing to worry about. All they gotta do is show up and do law school. But you're showing up and doing law school and, dealing with a chronic condition. And some people have kids, some people are working full time. And so we have to give ourselves grace, but then we have to figure out what are the right strategies? And one of them is building a community because that mentorship and that support is so needed. Law school is so super competitive. The practice of law is that way. And if everywhere you go, you never see a friendly face, it just kind of adds to the burdens, right? And of course, now you're continuing that legacy of mentorship and support because you're going to be the next president of the Tampa Hispanic Bar Association. And so before we get into that, how did you then, decide what area of law you're going to practice and or how you're going to get your first job? Because you said your grades being low might close some doors. What are some of the doors that you wanted to open?
I ironically got a great internship in my summer, and I don't know how or why. I leave it to my fate as to why, but I initially wanted to be a government lawyer, meaning in DC, if anyone's been there, there's a lot of government agencies. Of course, there are in Tallahassee. I know you went to FSU, but DC is just, a mammoth with everything as a government agency. So I was like, oh, this is the type of lifestyle I want to live. This material, international law, and I also like international employment and labor rights. So I was like, this is a great place to be. So that was the trajectory I was on. It was like employment law, labor law. I ironically am not an employment lawyer, but long story short, to answer your question, yes, what I did was I networked. I think my network helped me a lot with my first internship. And then that helped me get a paid position the next year as a law clerk at a union for labor rights. And that was my trajectory in law school. So I was actually very blessed to have good internships, but I really am grateful because I had a lot of lawyers come to this law school. And I thinking now I'm a lawyer. I'm like, that is a sacrifice, and host panels. They would have a panel for solo law firms. Like if you had that interest, they would have a panel for government lawyers. If you had that interest, criminal lawyers. And that was really helpful for me. And I would go to those at lunch. And to summarize it, if I was an advice I would give someone is take advantage of resources, show interest. If you see someone coming to a panel and you want to learn about that career, meet the person hosting the panel. It's not like you're trying to get a job directly from them or anything, but it's good that you can ask them, how did you get to where you are? Right. And you can get, and by asking people on those panels that, you can get an idea of what you need to do to get in similar positions as well. So that helped me a lot, asking questions and being, like you said, part of a community.
Yeah, I always tell my students, like, they're right here. Go to them and ask for their card. And then the lawyers always say, contact me. And then no one contacts them. It's just like, they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm like, hi, I was in the panel. I enjoyed talking to you. I have some questions. That's what you say, right? Or just send them a little note. And I tell people the more you do that, the more you'll see the same people over and over. Now, these people become acquaintances, right? Now, if they have a job opening, they'll say, "Oh, there was that student I met that I stayed in touch with. They just sent me an email saying they were graduating and looking for a job." They're going to call you. But if you don't reach out, right, that won't happen. So now we know you're a solo practitioner. What did you do before you became a solo practitioner? And what was it that made you want to open your own firm?
Yes. So we're actually, my husband joined my firm, so we moved from solo to now small firm. But before I started my law firm, I worked, what led me to where I am today actually was, like I said, I was trying to be a government lawyer, but then I met my husband in law school, so I didn't mention that. And he was a year ahead of me. And so we were at a crossroads because we were in DC and we needed to take the bar exam. And so we're like, okay, we need to find a place. And so that kind of shifted everything. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to move to another state because we didn't want at that point. We were just not in a position to take multiple bar exams. So we just chose the state of Florida because my family's here. And so I had to kind of revisit my whole like life plan and say, all right, well, I'll apply to a few places in Florida for labor, but I just didn't get any hits. So I was like, well, my next thing is if I'm not getting the exact subject matter, then I'm going to go to a place that I can see has mentorship. And so I applied to a couple law firms and I interviewed with one and I could just tell right off the bat that they were going to they were going to let me do things right off the bat, go to some depots, at least if not go to depots, watch them take depots, like learning those really practical skills. And I could just tell that they were going to treat their employees very well and also mentor. And so I interviewed, I could tell that. And it was a local Tampa firm. And I worked there for a few years. And what led me to, and I had a great experience there. And what led me to have my own firm was that I decided to, I knew that I wanted to eventually go out on my own. And I wanted to have somewhere that my husband and I could have, we work a lot, but we have a little more flexibility when I have my own business. And so that helped me. And so COVID was the perfect time to go out on my own. Everyone was doing everything was by Zoom and all the court hearings. So I said, if I'm going to go out, perfect time. Financially, not as much risk. And I luckily had my husband who was already working and he was a lawyer. So he was a great, motivator to go out on my own, a great supporter. And then I have little by little grown. And now we have my husband that's joined as a partner and a few employees. So it's been an exciting journey for sure.
Yes, so excellent. So I remember when we first met was by Zoom because you were one of the chairs of the Hillsborough County Bar Association Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And I remember, I don't know if you were at the firm yet or started your own solo, but I do remember seeing your name and I was like, oh, I've never met this person because, before COVID, I knew I was always at all the meetings and if it's a new person, I want to meet them. And I'm one of those people that'll go into a big meeting and find people I don't know and sit at that table so I can get to know everyone. But, like you said, it was a perfect opportunity to kind of do new things. And so we were meeting by Zoom. You were doing some great work and it did give a lot of flexibility. Lots of tough things happened, but there were also opportunities if you were properly poised. And so that's interesting to me that you started and you said he supported you. What made him want to join the firm now so that it's a family business?
Yeah. I think he just saw it's exciting, to start something new. And I think he saw that. I think he saw, and we built it from the ground up. I didn't take any cases with me. It was full, we are starting from the bottom. And it's scary, but there's an exciting element to it. I don't know if, entrepreneurship is for everybody, but I think I tend to be a little bit more risk tolerant. So if you're a little risk tolerant and also self-disciplined. There's a lot of self-discipline and it comes with it. And you can trust yourself to do what you're going to have to do with nobody else telling you when to do it. You have that. And I think a lot of lawyers do. I don't think they give themselves enough credit, right? Because we go to law, we have to do a lot on our own. But it's just, I think he saw the excitement to it, and I think he's kind of like me where we're kind of autonomous people in the sense that we like to have independence. And so I think he saw it and it's really interesting because he joined and it's almost like as you add team members, the work grows. It's kind of interesting because you find more need and you're like, oh, okay, there's more need. It's just, you have more hands, right? You have more people to help. So it's been very exciting. And I'm not saying it's not a challenge because it's a challenge. We've invested a lot into it, but there's also a lot of exciting opportunities that come with it.
There are. And you know what I found? A lot more law students want to be solo. Like they want to just skip all this and get to the solo. I'm like, hold on, you got to learn how to practice law first.
Okay.
But I always like to have people be honest about their experiences so that law students who are thinking about that, just understand, learn how to practice law, understand the risks, but be strategic, and it can be done. Because like you said, lawyers, we learn so much. You have to learn how to learn in law school. And that's, if you figure that out, you can learn other things too, including entrepreneurship. And so what advice would you give to prospective and current law students?
So when I was reflecting on this, mine's actually, it came out, I was interested that it came out this way, but mine's a little bit of financial practical things, because that's, I guess, my personal experience. One big thing, if you're looking for potential law students, if you're looking for law schools, obviously your interests, of course, your whatever you're looking for when it comes to the specialties and stuff, of course, that's an element. But also don't just consider the cost of the school, but the cost of living. So I did get a scholarship, like I said, to a great school, and I love that school, don't get me wrong. But I didn't pay enough attention to not just the scholarship I was getting for the school, but how much is it going to cost for me to live in that region? And that was and that's one thing. So most of and one thing my personal challenge that I'm still going and dealing with, and that's why I'm going to give this advice, is I'm still dealing with student loan debt from a couple of weeks since the 2016. So for me, looking back, I said, if I had to go back in time, I would have considered that. If we're talking financial, think about not just the cost of the school, but is it more economical than another school cost of living? Second to that, for current law students looking for job applications and things like that, make sure that you're reading, like one thing I'm getting, because I'm getting applications now that I'm hiring, make sure you're reading the entire prompt. Make sure that you are reading the job description. And it sounds funny, but when you're a lawyer, your job is to read what even local judges, you should be looking at what the local judges are saying, not just what the Supreme Court of Florida is saying or what the appellate court. You also want to know the judge's rules. And so when I'm evaluating an attorney, I'm saying, can you follow just the directions on the job description? Because if you can't, then that tells me potentially you're not able to, or either don't want this job, you don't want this job enough, which is fine, because there's not every firm, everyone has a perfect place for them. Or two, you're applying, but you're not reading. And how am I get to know that you're not now going to follow the directions when I need you to go to court for me, and make sure that the local judge has a specific preference that another judge in the same exact courthouse has? So that's one thing. That's for a present law student applying to jobs. Current law students, don't live like a lawyer when you're in law school. You are going to have, if you're taking out loans, you're going to have to pay that money back. So live now under your means. And there's great budgeting apps that are free and all of that, and that's not to add, it sounds, that sounds stressful to have a budget or whatever. Those things are actually in the long term less stressful than momentary affliction or momentary, this is just annoying. Because honestly, if it was not for these basic principles, I could not run a business. Basic budgeting for me has allowed me to start a business with more financial acumen, because it's how you do the small things is how you're going to do the big things. So make sure you're getting some new habits, that you're putting these good habits in now, and that's going to set you up for a stronger future.
Yeah, so that's some great advice. I was just nodding, yup, because I told my students I was eating cup of noodles my first term. They always think I'm joking. I'm like, I'm not joking. I literally bought the big old Costco thing of it, and that's what I ate for lunch every day. And there was free hot water at law school, so I got that. And I lived like a law student, and I paid off my student loans in 4 years. They're like, how did you do that? I'm like, one payment at a time. Yeah, but it's one payment at a time. I would say continue to live like a law student for the first 5 years that you're practicing law. That's how you pay it off. I had about 75,000. So just to give some reference, I know students now are graduating with double six-figure debt.
I had double that.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I understand. So I like to give a number, because I don't like to pretend like be one of those older people like back in my day. So I had 75K. I paid 10,000 in interest, but I paid so aggressively that I was just ate into the principal. If you are able to do that, I was at a big law firm making six figures, and I was married. So I was able to do that. But if you can envision what you want for your financial life, you can achieve it. And those are some great tips, because I see my students now. We go out to these events and I bought a new dress. Like every new event is a new dress. I'm like, how do you, okay, no judgment. If you got it like that, cool. But But especially if you want to move to a big city, DC, New York, LA, they always want to go to the big cities. And I'm like, good luck with it. But the cost of living, yep, I got accepted to University of Miami, and you're from there. Beautiful. Coral Gables is beautiful. They gave me like $18,000 scholarship, which at the time was like more than 50% of the tuition. And I'm looking at FSU in Tallahassee, and it's like, not as beautiful. But they gave me a $3,000 scholarship. So you're like, well, that's easy pick. No, it wasn't. I calculated, I had a friend going to school there. She got her master's and her JD. The cost of living was outrageous. In Tallahassee, you can get an apartment for $300 a month if you have roommates. So I was like, yeah, this is. So your point about the total cost of your law school education is a really good, powerful point. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now that you are a lawyer, you're in the Tampa legal community, you're so involved. Talk to us about what the Tampa Hispanic Bar Association is doing, what your plans are as a next president, and how that ties into diversity and inclusion in the law, and particularly first generation students.
Because I had such generous, mentors and everything in law school. They really were. I mean, looking back and now being a lawyer, I did appreciate it, but I appreciate it even more now that I'm a lawyer and practicing and realize how regimented our schedules are and how, we don't control we control our schedules, but there's a lot of things that our judges, we have to be at. And so I really appreciated that. And part of, and this is like, something I've heard you say a lot is basically, when you get, kind of give, right? Like that principle, like if you've been given something, you need to give something back. And I definitely hold that principle too, which is I want to give back as well. And when you give, never give because you want to receive something. You give and you hope that the seed falls, but you never give, oh, I hope that person gives it back to me. That's the number one. So that's why I've been involved in not just the, Tampa Hispanic Bar, but also Hillsborough County Bar. They have great programs for mentorship and everything. And that's one of my motivations that I know I've been given. And so I also want to give to others and give and help others with opportunities. As far as the Tampa Hispanic Bar, I'm the current chair of the YLD. And so one thing I want to definitely increase and continue working on the great work of our past presidents, Amy, Natalia, and them that's come before, is I want to continue connecting with the local law students. Recently, we had an event, Skating to the 80s party, and we invited local law students, Stetson, Cooley, to come join us and get to know other lawyers. And we definitely had, and I appreciate Professor Hardwick for getting the word out because we had some Cooley law students come out. And that's what I want to keep on doing. I want to continue, at least our YLD, to continue having events and inviting the students so they can meet lawyers who are in their field, connect with them. And if you're staying local, that's a great way to start kind of understanding what firms are in the area. Hey, where would I want to go? Or do I want to be in the government work? Do I want to be a state attorney criminal? Do I want to be a staff attorney with a judge? But we have judges that come to our events. We have lawyers. We have professors, Professor Hardwick. This is great resources to kind of help you figure out in your future what your career might be like. So that's one of my goals, is to increase our law school partnerships, and definitely a trajectory we want to do. We also offer continuing legal education classes. We also have an upcoming event called the Latina Leaders and Summit. And with the summit, basically, where we invite prominent Latina lawyers and everything. And it hasn't only just been lawyers. I think we've had other careers too, just prominent Latinas, in the community, and to come out and share their experiences in their career. So that's always good to learn from others. And I think we try and provide those opportunities so people can not just meet them, but also learn about their experiences and the challenges that they have had to overcome.
Yeah, I've heard great things about the Latina Leaders Summit. I've seen great pictures. I've never been able to make it because there's so much activity in the Tampa legal community. Like we all try to coordinate too. Just like there's only so many weekends, you know. But
Yes,
that is a great event. Yeah, you have scholarships as well. Don't you have a scholarship banquet?
yes, thank you for talking about that. Yes, so then we also have an annual scholarship gala. Last year was in November, and we awarded, I believe, at least 3 scholarships to law students. So that's an opportunity for you as well. If you're in law school, and I don't have the criteria in front of me. I don't know if it's also for incoming. I think it is for law students. Yes. So it's a law student scholarship, and we offer that like I said, the gala was in November last year. We awarded at least 3 of them. So if you are listening, we are planning our upcoming gala. So keep it on the radar. You can follow us. It's Tampa Hispanic Bar Association. You can just Google us and our website will come up. And as the gala comes closer and we announce the scholarships and everything, definitely take advantage of that and apply. And, these are resources. And sometimes we're like, we hope we can get applicants and everything. So definitely take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I've known the Cooley students. I think Michelle Guzman got it. One of our Journey to Esquire folks, Brittany Lainez was one of the people who got it too. And here's the story about Brittany Lainez. So she got that in 2018, and
Okay.
she was in the first class of Journey to Esquire. So she graduated 2019. She just passed the Florida bar.
Oh, wow.
And she is working for one of the local government offices, but she worked on that for 5 years. And I believed in her and prayed over her and everything. I remember I was there when she got the scholarship from the Tampa Hispanic Bar. She's like, "This is so great. I just handed it in and I'm so, excited." And, she was doing like translation work with you guys, with the local legal aid and for folks who are doing immigration applications. And when she gave her presentation at our event, she said, it's for my grandmother, Argentina, who she was named after, and her abuela, and she passed away. She felt like she was with her. And I said, your grandmother's smiling down now when she finally announced that she passed the bar exam. So I'm not telling her business, y'all. She was very open about
Yeah.
that she just passed the bar exam and is
Awesome.
now a practicing attorney. And your organization was able to kind of help her on that trajectory. So that scholarship banquet means a lot to me because, as we know, we talked about the finances, right? People think like, well, you're a law student, there's money floating everywhere down from it's like, no, we need financial support as well.
Yes, definitely. That's just one less. If you can at least have that, it's one less stressor. It's already it's such a new field. I mean, law, just studying law, and one less stressor is always something that, I think is welcome. So,
Yeah. And as first generation lawyers, our families don't get it.
right.
Because when you graduate law school, there's more expenses. The bar exam costs a lot of money. The application fee, the prep courses are in the 3,000s now. And then, you want to try to not work if you can afford it because it's a full-time study program. And so, yeah. So I think it circles back to that as well. Because we're coming from families who don't quite get it and don't have the financial resources, we are there for them and can encourage them and provide the additional resources that they need to kind of get through the finish line. So any last words for us, Christina?
I again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate and honored to be a part of this. I just am so excited to see, this how it's flourishing and everything like that. And I wish I had this. So take advantage of, for those who are listening, of this wonderful resource. And I am looking forward to seeing your continued success. And anyone, you feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about my specific journey or about applications and cover letters. If you're in the searching for a job, if you're about to graduate in the spring and you're looking for a job, and I know first is the bar exam, but if you start, I would recommend as a practical tip, get a second set of eyes on your resume and your and your template cover letters. Make sure that these little practical things are kind of tied up so that you can put your best foot forward for your next part of your journey.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to put your contact information, Tampa Hispanic Bar Association,
Yes.
and all other relevant information we talked about today. And we'll see you guys next time on the Journey to Esquire podcast. Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.